The province had been split into two sections, Superior and Inferior Pannonia. We are not exactly sure about the date of St. Martin's birth, but we know it was sometime between 313 and 340 AD, with the latter date, 340, probably being the most likely. Now, Martin's father, whose name we don't exactly know, was a senior officer in the Roman army, an equestrian tribune, essentially a knight within the imperial horse guard. Martin's father was a disciplined and courageous soldier who rose up the ranks of the Roman army. He starts as a common legionnaire and works his way up, which is not exactly an easy thing to do. When Martin is around 12 years old, his father is transferred to a new duty station in Pavia, which is in northern Italy. Now, in Pavia, young Martin learns for the first time about Christianity. He feels drawn to it and becomes a secret catechumenate. He starts learning the teachings of Christianity, but in secret. And while receiving a religious instruction, he decides to become a monk. But there's a fly in the ointment. Martin is, of course, the son of a decorated war veteran. And when he turns 15, he is compelled by his father to join the army. It is expected of him to join the ranks of military service for Rome. Martin never shirks his military duty and does what a soldier must sometimes do, go into battle and kill the enemy. But Martin lives more like a monk than a soldier. He gives his pay to the poor, for example. He helps the distressed and practices humility and patience. He desires, in a way, to make the army camp. He wants to transform it into something resembling a monastery. Young Martin, who will spend the next 5 years in the army, is then stationed in Amiens, Gaul. This is modern-day France, by the Somme River, north of Paris. Amiens is now the site of the world-famous Cathedral of Notre Dame, the largest church in France. And, of course, Notre Dame is one of the leading examples of Gothic architecture in Europe. Gaul, which encompasses modern-day France, northern Italy, and, of course, parts of Germany, first becomes a Roman province, Gallia Narbonensis. This is only in the south of Gaul, circa 121 BC. Then Julius Caesar subdues the northern and central part of Gaul in a rather savage conquest that lasts roughly 7 years, from 58 to 51 BC. Gaul is then subdivided into sections. You have Cisalpine Gaul, which is the prosperous northern region of Italy. This is from the Apennines to the Alps. Then you have Transalpine Gaul, which is from the Pyrenees Mountains and the Mediterranean coast of France to the English Channel, basically the Atlantic Ocean to the Rhine and the Western Alps. Now, Transalpine Gaul is then subdivided into 3 regions. These subdivisions are according to the native Gallic peoples living in each section. You have Aquitania in the southwest. You have Gallia in the western central region. And you have Pelagia in the northeast. Now, by the time of Martin's adulthood, Gaul in all its divisions has been Christianized, but the area was subject to repeated invasions from the Germanic tribes. Tribes like the Alemanni, the Burgundians, the Franks, and the Visigoths. So it was likely that young Martin probably saw lots of action in battle. The encroachment of these Germanic tribes on Roman territory had caused great suffering for the Romanized Gauls. For example, their economic prosperity had been shattered by all this constant invasion. The stability and enhanced prestige of the region was in ruins due to high taxes, corruption, as I mentioned, invasions, and of course internal weaknesses. So the province, which was once rich, was now suffering in great poverty. It is while young Martin is stationed in Amiens, Gaul, that an incident occurs which tradition and art have rendered so famously. During a very harsh winter, a severe frost, Martin rides towards the gates of the city. It is a very cold and windy morning, and Martin notices near the gates of Amiens a thinly clad poor man, trembling, shivering with cold, and begging for alms. Martin sees very clearly that those who go before take no notice of the almost naked poor man who is shaking from the wind and the cold. Nobody, none that passed, stopped to help this poor fellow. Martin has no money, nothing with him but the cloak on his back. So he draws his gladius sword and cuts his great woolen garment into two pieces, giving one half to the poor man and then wrapping himself up in the other half. Now, according to legend, the following night, Martin, in his sleep, dreams of Christ, Jesus surrounded by angels, and Christ is dressed in the half of the woolen cloak that Martin had given away. Now, in this dream or vision, a voice tells Martin to look at the cloak closely and say whether he recognizes it or not. Martin then hears the voice of Christ say to him, Martin, you are yet only a catechumenate, but have covered me with your cloak. Martin then wakes up in a cold sweat and runs to be baptized and formally becomes a Christian. When Martin was around 30 years of age, some of the Germanic tribes again invade Gaul. He goes along with his comrades in arms to see the Emperor Julian in order to receive a war bounty, essentially extra pay from the imperial office for the dangers the soldiers will now face in battle. Martin refuses to accept the war bounty and tells the Emperor Julian that up until this very moment, I served Rome as a soldier. Please allow me now to serve Christ. Give the bounty to those others who are going out to battle. I am a soldier of Christ, and it is no longer lawful for me to fight and kill. The Emperor Julian is not amused by Martin's refusal. He becomes angered and accuses Martin of cowardice. Martin quickly replies that he is ready to go into battle the very next day, to go into battle unarmed, and tells the, startled Julian that he, Martin, will advance alone against the invading barbarians, doing this in the name of Christ. Julian thinks that the, soldier has gone mad or has been bewitched. So he does not execute him, but puts Martin in the stockade. He puts him in jail and actually discharges Martin once a truce with the Germanic tribes has been established. Now, let me talk a little bit about the Emperor Julian, also known as Julian the Apostate. His real name is Flavius Claudius Julianus. Julian was in fact tutored in Christianity and baptized, but fell in love as a young boy with the classics of Greek and Roman literature and decided to convert to paganism. He desires to worship the old gods. Julian wants to restore Rome to her former pagan glory and attempts to marginalize Christianity as a social force. The apostate emperor purges the imperial court of all Christians and begins a vigorous program of pagan activism. Julian restores the pagan temples, finances, and ancestral cults. He appoints a civic pagan priesthood and desires to establish a Neoplatonic pagan church of Rome, while stripping the Christian church of all financial subsidies and privileges that were gained under the Emperor Constantine. Julian is tolerant of Christianity and does not pursue a violent persecution, but the emperor overtly discriminates in favor of pagan individuals. He is a talented general and very popular with the army, winning many victories over the Germanic tribes during his short time on the imperial